honorable ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I'm John Curran. It's an honor to be here and present before you at your CTO meeting this week. I'll give 30 seconds just so you know who's speaking to you, because I am going to be talking about the internet and you want to understand my background in terms of communicating that. I have been involved in the internet since the late 80s. That's before, well, mobile and the web and a few other things. I was working at a company called Bolt, Beranek and Newman, BBN, known for building, well, the ARPANET, the first packet switch network. BBN actually became one of the 5 earliest internet backbones in the United States, the first 5 commercial networks that transitioned the traffic from the National Science Foundation network. I've been involved in the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, the group that does the internet protocols. I ran several working groups, and then I was the operations area director responsible for the working groups of the IETF working on standards for network management and network operations. I've been the CTO of BBN, later on GTE Internetworking, GTE's internet business, and then later on XO Communications, a $1 billion telecommunications internet company, one of the first that did voice over the internet. So I've been involved with the internet technology and its transformation since the beginning. Since 1997, though, I've been involved in this tiny little association called the American Registry for Internet Numbers. And what it did in 1997 was took over a function that before that time was done for the internet by the US government. It was the coordination of IP addresses. And the US government realized that that should be done by industry, not by one government. So in 1997, it asked the internet providers of the world, at which point there were about 90 of us, to get in a room and form an association. And ARIN is that association, the American Registry for Internet Numbers. I'm going to talk more about ARIN and the internet ecosystem, but I wanted to give a little bit of background just so you understood where I'm coming from. So what I want to talk about today, I'm going to go through the agenda here. Here we go. Okay. So about ARIN and the internet ecosystem, talking about the upsides and the downsides of digital transformation, talking about where that leaves governments, because folks, it leaves governments in a very unusual position. And then moving from defense to offense, some practical measures and strategies. First, let's talk about the internet ecosystem. This is the revolution we're talking about that Bernadette referenced earlier. Now, there's a number of parties in the internet ecosystem. You've got governments and not-for-profits and for-profits. You've got folks handling domain names, the .com, the two-letter country codes. You've got industry associations and standards associations. In the center, though, you've got the users. And around them, the service providers, the application developers, the content that makes the internet magical. Now, I'm not going to say that packet networking wasn't revolutionary. It was, okay? Being able to move communication without dedicating circuits to it is a wonderful thing. And in fact, I made a lot of work doing that and switching voice on to one of the first networks. Packet communications is a revolution. But you know what the real revolution was? This is a permissionless system. This system doesn't ask anyone for permission. If you want to create an application, you go and create it. If you want to create a website, you go and create it. Now, there have been online services before. France had Minitel. You create a service and people could use it. But you don't get 1 million applications and 1 million websites if you have to centrally plan and ask for permission. The amazing thing about the internet is permissionless innovation. There are people doing new apps while we're sitting here. There's new websites being set up as we're sitting here. There's new ways to connect people being built as we're all here. None of that is being centrally planned. None of that is asking you for permission. It's just happening. And that's what allows the innovation to occur. All these feed off each other and cause things to happen very quickly. Now, there is one part of this little system, which is the number registries, We're the IP address authorities. We're the ones that give out the IP addresses, those numbers that are used to make every computer connect to the internet. Aaron is one of them. There's actually 5 of us. We work in a global system. Aaron for North America and about half of the Caribbean. LACNIC, the other half of the Caribbean, Latin America. RIPE for Europe. APNIC for the Asia Pacific Rim. And AFRINIC for the African continent. Together, all 5 of us coordinate one registry. We're 5 organizations, all not-for-profit, all member-elected boards. We work together to have one unique digital registry so every computer can have its own number. I'm going to talk about Aaron briefly just so you know, but all of the RIR's regional internet registries are similar. We're service organizations with member-elected boards that coordinate with each other for a global registry. Not very exciting, actually, very boring business. But we're actually the mapping between the real world and cyberspace. On cyberspace, everything's got an IP address. We're the ones that know where those IP addresses are. So we spend a lot of time dealing with law enforcement and abuse and related issues. And that's kind of what I'm talking to you about today. So let's talk about what's happened in the last 2 years. We had COVID, and that caused a number of pretty rapid changes to happen, okay? Everyone talked about digital transformation for a lot of governments, for a lot of industries. Suddenly, digital transformation was here whether they liked it or not. They didn't really get a choice. If you wanted to serve your customers, you had to move quickly. If you wanted to serve your citizens, you had to move quickly. You had to do things online that you were thinking about doing, and you had to do them in the next 6 months, not sometime over the next 5 years. That meant for many people building out infrastructure, creating new services, digitizing existing systems. A lot of work involved in this, and everyone moved quick. The problem is when you move quick, well, you take shortcuts, and that did happen everywhere. Not just governments, a lot of businesses and a lot of industries that were based on face-to-face contact and local offices suddenly went digital, okay? Where does this leave us? Government's under siege. You are a very attractive target, and you are being attacked, okay? You're being attacked in many ways in subtle measures that don't show up yet. The one that I found out just a month ago was I got involved in title crime. And title crime is when someone in the US, they steal a property. Now, when you buy a property, you have a title, usually you have insurance actually, that protects your title to make sure the party you're buying it from actually owns the property. That's not what we're talking about. This is very innovative. This is ID theft taken to the next level. When someone passes away, in the world when we had COVID, what happens is, well, if you don't go and update the records, someone creates an heir and shows up because it's all digital now. It's all being done with email and photographs of IDs. They actually transfer the property to themselves, a look-alike person. Okay, now you don't know it's your father's house or your brother's house. You don't know it's been sold. You weren't told. And then they get a home loan against it and get $20,000, $30,000, and then they disappear. Now, it's only when someone later on shows up and starts saying, you have a home loan you have to pay back, that someone figures this out. This couldn't happen before because everyone showed up at the courthouse with a notary together. But in the time of COVID, we were processing transfers without everyone showing up at the courthouse. Some of the things that have happened during the time of COVID, we still are waiting to see the fallout for. And you need to think about this, okay? The good and the bad here, okay? Incredible internet adoption. Everyone's been moving quickly. The bad side, okay, is that you have risks you don't know about right now. The good news is people are paying attention to it, but it requires resources, and while you're addressing them, you're fragile. Now, governments have never been necessarily strong in IT, okay? We kind of know this. And moving headlong into digital transformation very quickly leaves people more fragile. I am not saying that you should be panicked. You shouldn't be running out to the phones right now. But you need to be very aware of the fact that many systems were put online without the type of risk work that would normally be done, okay? And you just need to keep that in mind. Because while we're doing this digital transformation, We don't want to, we want to get more of the good than the bad. We have another problem. I'm going to talk about this at length, but I have one slide now. And the one slide is this AI thing. This AI, the now artificial intelligence models that are appearing on the internet are a game changer. They are a new generation, okay? And it's, when you think about it, pretty obvious why, but I'll talk about it. But let me talk about the threats first. I'll come back to AI. So here's the thing. Traditionally, that bottom row is what people think about when they think about hackers. Malicious insiders. Nation states, a country trying to get at you. Hackivists, the gentleman in his mom's basement for the fun of it who's breaking into places. When you think about cybercrime, folks, don't think about them. Think about the top line and think about it as a commercial enterprise. So the thing that's happened on the internet that most people don't realize is that crime and cybercrime is big business, and it's professional, and it's organized, and it's innovating, and it's acting in a permissionless environment. Okay, what do I mean by that? When you get a phishing mail saying, hey, I have a purchase order here, click on it to see that information, and it's actually a fake email, and it's waiting for you to click on it so it can somehow get access to your credential or your file server. You'd think, well, that's some, bright 17-year-old hacker in his mother's basement. No. The phishing email is probably the result of 4 or 5 other parties involved. 4 or 5 other organizations working together to break your credentials. How is that possible? Well, someone built a phishing toolkit. Someone built a piece of software that generates email that looks like good invoices and puts the fields in for your organization, and that's all they did. They wrote a software tool. Someone else built a list of likely agencies or likely companies or likely schools or likely hospitals, and they sold that list to a third person who bought the toolkit and bought the list. Now that person, he doesn't know much. He's just trying to make money. He's trying to get, maybe it's ransomware he's doing. He's trying to lock up your computer and get $300 worth of Walmart gift cards or Amazon gift cards, okay? He may have no hacking skill, but he's paid someone else. You can buy this service online for $20 to run the website that when you click on the email, steals your credentials. So now we got 4 parties involved in this. This is not one person doing craft work to break your government. This is an entire ecosystem, and it's a game of numbers, by the way. He's trying to get that email to 10,000 businesses or 1,000 hospitals or 500 schools. Maybe 2% will click, and they'll lock up their computers. And when they lock up their computers, maybe half of them will send gift cards or send Bitcoin or money orders. You'd be amazed. And he's going to lose about half that money getting it because he has it go to other people who cash it for him and send him Bitcoin. So at the end of the day, it's a game of numbers. When he runs through 10,000 emails and pays for the toolkit and sends the spam and then gets you to click on it and pays someone else for the server and then pays someone to receive it, at the end of the day, yeah, there's about $3,000 involved and he has about $400 of expense. And that week he makes $2,600. And there's 100 of these guys out there or 1,000 of them, and they know nothing about cybersecurity. They know nothing about computer security. They're using off-the-shelf tools. There's groups in things like Telegram where they can privately buy and sell and trade tools. Now, there are criminal groups, folks who you associate with things like large-scale drugs and large-scale extortion and other organized criminal enterprises, and they do these same things too, only they do it better with lower overhead and higher returns. They aim for much greater scale. This is what you're up against, and it's innovating. As I said, as we're out here, people are building better toolkits. People are building better attacks on you. I found out something last week that terrified me. DDoS. Does everyone know what DDoS is? DDoS is denial of service. I want to, boom, come here. DDoS is distributed denial of service. It's when we get, 10, 20, 30,000 computers to all send you traffic. And I've been familiar with this because large-scale organizations like the NFL, ESPN, Disney, the Oscars, they worry about DDoS because you'll get extorted to pay tens of millions of dollars not to get taken down in the middle of the Emmys or not to get taken down in the middle of the Super Bowl. And I've been involved in handling the cybercrime side of some of this. I found out DDoS is available as a service. DDoS as a service. You can go online and they call them stress bots, or they also call them knockout bots. And for $20 or $30, you can sign up and give it an IP address and it will send traffic to that device. And you know what this is used for? This is used by kids playing games. So when they're on their video game, first-person shooter, and they're shooting each other and trying to win, if they don't like what their opponent does, they pay $20 and knock their opponent's home computer off using a DDoS attack. This has become so routine that for $20, I can sign up for a service and take out anyone. Now, it's a very small DDoS, and it won't harm most businesses or governments, but it gives you an idea about the ecosystem. These things exist out there, and they are developing and evolving as we're here. What sort of attacks? DDoS, ransomware, election systems. There's a whole bunch of people selling software to break election systems. That's a complete wake-up call for me. DNS, denial of service attacks. So the problem with the internet is that it allows permissionless innovation. You know who's really good at innovating? Criminals. And they're doing it. They have a better, more robust market and ecosystem than you do, okay? And they don't ask for permission. Now, that means the future's arrived, okay? Not only do we have these threats, but as you're digitizing, you have to begin thinking about the fact that a lot of the protections that we base things on are based on society influencing people, society telling people what they can and can't do. You can't post misinformation because society says it's a bad idea. You can't create a forged ID because society says it's a bad idea, okay? Well, those rules don't apply to criminals. They don't apply to criminals, okay? So the rules that everyone's playing by in our permissionless, innovative internet, the criminals don't have to follow. They can engage in misinformation. They can engage in redirection. They can use AI to create credentials, images that are just as good as what you'd expect anyone to have. So we need to be very aware of this. As you're moving into the digital domain, remember that your opponents are well-funded. This is not you're not being attacked by one or two actors, state actors, or people against you. You're being attacked by 10,000 who it's a business for every one of them. And this changes how you have to respond. Future attacks are going to be wherever large sums of money flow. So, large businesses, large governments, trade institutions, anybody involved in regulation, okay? If you have the ability to tap large sums of money, then you are our target. One of the cyber attacks that I was involved in about 4 months ago, now 7 months ago, involved an attack against an insurance company. And it was interesting. They attacked the insurance company and they stole some data. No one figured out what it was. We couldn't figure out what it was they took. They didn't steal information on bank accounts. They didn't steal general customer data. You know what they stole? They stole information about cyber security insurance policies, just the cybercrime insurance policies. So they would know, for a list of 850 companies in the US and Canada, they would know how much cyber insurance each had against ransomware. So when they went and broke into a company, they knew exactly how much to ask, how many million, because they had already seen their insurance policy. Don't ask for more than they have. This is the type of thing going on out there, and the actors doing it are well armed. Okay, so increasing sophistication, highly resourced, highly motivated. Okay? The fact is that your readiness is going to be based on how much funding you put in and how much work you put here. I am not saying don't do digital transformation. What I'm saying is either do it right or be prepared for the consequences. Put the financing in to do it right. Now, some of this is not hard. There's some really simple things we can all do. The groundwork that we all have to do is well known, well practiced. Let's talk about it. So I want to say this is not rocket science, but this has to happen in your digital transformation. Training, okay? What I just talked about in some of these threats are very well known. You need a cybersecurity expert. You absolutely need them involved in every program you do. You can rent them, you can hire them, you can borrow them, you can pay outside firms, but they need to understand the threat landscape. Establish and enforce compliance standards. There's a number of wonderful frameworks out there. Some governments have their own framework, or you can use an industry one. Industry standards include things like SOC, the AICPA security framework. Establish those, enforce those. What that will do is that will prevent you from having a wide open door you don't know about. It's not perfect, not going to cover everything, not going to get against the most innovative attack, but should get you the 80-20 rule of being able to spend 20% of the cost and get 80% of the risks mitigated. Secure systems and connections. Think about who you're talking to. If you know it's a small number of parties, specifically set up the security. If you're working with 10,000 citizens and 2 other governments, secure the connections for the 2 other governments. Don't try to necessarily do encryption to 10,000 citizens, not that you don't have to, but where you have a small number of well-known locations, work on the security specifically for them. Maintain a cyber incident response team. Okay, so folks, this is very important, and you have a cyber incidents response team now. You just forgot to declare their name, their title, or their charter. I guarantee you, if a cyber incident happens in your organization, someone's going to respond, and it probably involves you, and it probably involves a few other people, okay? What I'm telling you is give it a name, set up a call list, give the team a name, start doing exercises. You have a response whether you like it or not. You might as well define the people responding as a team, begin to train them, and set them up. Okay. Organize routine cyber incident simulations. This is follow-on to that. You might want to wait until something happens. No, don't do that. Have at least one exercise every year. It can be simple. It can be we have a ransom attack, or we have a DDoS attack, or we have discovered that all of our citizens / customers / employees' data has been disclosed to the web. By the way, the attack profiles are changing. So for example now, when a company or government or hospital is broken into now, the folks doing ransomware, they used to actually leak the data out there. 10% of the data they'd send out and say, we're going to release the other 90 unless you pay us ransomware. Turns out, if you leak 10% of the data, most of the damage to the company is already done. It's reputational. So now what do? They very quietly contact the company. They send the company 10% of its data. They say, you can actually avoid having this be made public if you pay the ransomware now, pay the ransom up front. And it turns out companies are very responsive to that, because if I can prevent anyone else from hearing about it, that's a win. So they're evolving their techniques. You need to do cyber exercises to be ready for these new techniques. Develop an insider threat program. Okay, for a few of your operations, you have to think about what's the worst case scenario of a compromised employee? Just not everything you do, not all your systems, but you will have some systems. For example, when you start talking about digital IDs, there's a small number of people who you need to make sure don't create digital IDs except according to the way the system's supposed to do it. So you need to have a threat. And you're not doing it just to protect yourself. You're doing it to protect them and their families and their loved ones. We are getting to the point now where, yes, there are people who, them and their families and loved ones could be put at risk if you give them too much authority. And if that gets out there, that one person, Joe Smith, can be picked up in the parking lot, or his daughter can be picked up, and he can be leveraged to do something. So you need to have this not just for the employees for your own protection, but for their protection, to make sure they don't have disproportionate authority. Collaborate on security. This is huge. This room is a powerful weapon. You folks talking to each other is a powerful weapon. Why? Well, again, innovation's happening out there. The criminals are innovating. While we're here, they're innovating. So you need to talk to each other. No one has the best or perfect program, okay? But some of you might be pretty good in one area or have learned something in another, and you have to share that. If you want to be able to even have a chance of keeping pace, you need to work with your peers. Yeah, it's a little embarrassing. There's nothing like telling someone, hey, what do you do about credentials? Because we just had a big leak. Yeah, that's kind of embarrassing, okay? But it's far better to talk to your peers in this room than end up talking about it in the press or paper, okay? I promise you, you need to use each other. This is a great forum. This is why the CTO exists, is for things like this. Use each other. This last one is the terrifying one, and I almost didn't put it in here, but I want to say, you guys have to learn about AI, okay? Because anything you do over the internet has a chance now of not being who you think it is, but being an AI natural language model. Aaron issues IP addresses to organizations. We have to ask people who they are. We ask them for documents. We ask them for photographs of their government ID, okay? Increasingly now, we've already seen people use tools to build fake credentials and fake documents, but they're not very good. I'm now terrified because, well, AI language can do an amazing job. I don't know if you've seen some of the work being done on these natural AI systems. Go get an account with OpenAI, ChatGPT, and pose some questions, and you'd be amazed at how quickly it can write something that's quite credible. So when you ask someone over the internet, when your agency, when your office, when your business interfaces with a citizen and asks them for information, yes, it's probably the citizen. 5 years from now, it could easily be an extremely well-organized AI. Now, if you go into ChatGPT or its online image equivalent, and you say, produce a passport photo and picture page of a UK citizen that looks credible, it'll say, I can't do that. It actually has ethics. It's been programmed not to generate offensive materials, pornography materials, identification materials. It won't generate those images. Do you think the criminals building AI models are putting those protections in? No, they're not, okay? So there's a good chance that the things that we're now telling in society you can't do, the criminals will have AI models that are quite happy to do that. If you go into ChatGPT and you say, write a program to do X, Y, Z, it will spit out a great program, and it's great. If you say, write a Perl script to break in to a Microsoft SQL server, it'll say, I can't do that. Not, I don't know how, but I can't because I've been programmed not to do that. Well, yeah, it turns out that the ones that the criminals are working on don't have that restriction. And you're going to now see attack methods that are AI-enabled. Go look at all of the data that this company has out there and determine which attack method would be best, Mr. AI. We're not too far away. 2 years, maybe 3 at the tops. learn about AI, pay attention to it. It's going to become very important. Because in cyberspace we have no real world anchor, you're increasingly going to be dealing with an AI and not knowing it. Okay, I just want to try to close, and then I'll take a few questions because I know we have photos and a break. Aaron reaches out to governments. We talk to them all the time. We do this in the Caribbean a lot, but we have a whole team that's responsible for helping governments with cyber issues. We don't do training necessarily because we're a small organization, but in terms of connecting people and letting people know what's going on, we do work with governments and justice departments and law enforcement. Bevel Wooding, Bevels, raise your hand. Bevel's here from me. If you guys have questions or want to make connections with your counterparts elsewhere in the globe, Bevel's the man to talk to. And our programs include information like this, how to help people learn about strategies, partner with one another, network with their peers. With that, I'll take any questions. I know I'm between you and a break, though, so I'll be short. Any questions? I see people calling their VPs of IT, turn it off, turn it all off. No, it's not that bad, but folks, it is a terrifying world we live in. No questions? Okay. I will be out at the break if anyone wants to find, oh, yes, go ahead.
Thank you so
Sure.
much for the presentation. Excellent. Excuse me, sir, I've just got a microphone here.
I'll get your microphone. Come on.
So thank you so much for the excellent presentation. It's quite revealing, and we are there. I'm Usman Aliu from the delegation of Nigeria. My question is just on the insider threat program, if you could elaborate more on that.
The entire, which program?
Insider threat program. The insider threat program, yeah.
So let's talk about the insider threat issue. In general, if you do a credible job hiring and you do some modicum of checking of background, you will not hire someone whose purpose is to compromise your organization. I'm not saying it's impossible to do so, but it's unlikely. It takes a long-term and a large amount of work for someone to intentionally be placed in an organization for that purpose. That's really not what you're worried about. What you're worried about is someone who's already in your organization who's incentivized in order to do what could be something very small or could be something significant. And it could be a very tiny at first. It could be, hey, if I can get information about this, maybe that would help me use your agency's program, or maybe that would help me get more people. Sometimes they sound like they're trying to help you, but they're actually asking for information. And you'll have employees who, with the best of intention, will share your data with others, okay? Now, you need to train employees not to share data, even if they think they're helping. It's not their call to do that. You have private data, don't share it with others. You have private credentials, don't share it with others. But you need to tell the employees explicitly not to do that. You need to tell them to report incidents of people asking them. Why? Because even a small amount of sharing can then come back. They'll go to the employee and say, I need more. And if I don't have more, well, maybe I'm going to share with the public that you've already given us some. Or maybe I'll share with your boss, and your boss will fire you. Once they've gotten one bite of your data, they can take your insider and usurp him. We also have had cases where people have been threatened with violence. I have Aaron's offices in the US, we no longer have a sign on the building. We moved buildings, we didn't put a sign on the new one. Why? Because we had an employee who was approached in the parking lot and threatened over cybersecurity issue, over wanting something changed in the records. So what I'm saying is you have to train your employees to be aware that people will try this. You have to train them to report it. And you want to tell them even the smallest incident they need to report. Because Otherwise, it's a building block. They'll use it to get leverage on the employee and get more information. It's very important. It's important, and again, you're doing it not necessarily just for your sake, but so the employees and their families aren't put in a compromising situation. Not hard to set up, very high returns, particularly when you think about your employees and staff. Okay? Yes. I see a microphone coming around.
It's the last question, if you don't mind, sir, because it's over the time that we're running late. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, for an insightful presentation. I am, sorry, Mohammad Jahazaib from Pakistan. We understand that cybersecurity frameworks are evolving, and it also these frameworks also depend on the local context as well.
Right.
But based on your experience and exposure, which cybersecurity framework in the country you think is the most mature or that can be referenced while developing the national cybersecurity framework of any country?
There's a number of cybersecurity frameworks. There is a NIST framework. There's a CMMI model that's quite good. But increasingly, we're seeing people head to the AICPA's SOC model, which has 5 different categories of security assurance: confidentiality, integrity, security, which you'd call confidentiality, integrity, and privacy. And those set of controls are tunable to what you're doing. If you're a business, for example, Aaron, a lot of our records are public. So it's not a confidentiality issue, but it's an integrity issue to make sure they're not changed. That's a very flexible framework, and because it's administered by the AICPA Association, it's capable of being audited by auditors all over the globe. I would recommend looking at the SOC and SOC 2 framework as a place to start. Yep, back there. Oh, we are really past time. So let me just say one thing. Curran, JCURRAN at Aaron, ARIN, JCURRAN at aaron.net. Feel free to send me mail or grab a hold of Bevel. He'll be here for most of today. And happy to be here again. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, John, for that astonishing presentation, and thank you for the questions. We're going to have a network break. I request that you should be able to get in contact directly with John. I understand that there are lots of questions that are to be asked. I had my own questions. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, and I won't be able to ask the questions. So I invite everyone to have that opportunity during this short network break to be able to ask those questions, and we can be able to network together and be able to exchange and have some of our views and confusions clarified. Thank you very much. At this point in time, we will take a short break, during which we will take a group photograph. You will just follow the CTO staff who's at the entrance of the door, Mr. Robert. His hands is up. So you can just follow him, and he will take you to where we have the group photograph. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Thank you.